All right, welcome to Young Turks. Cenk and Anna with you guys. For those of you watching live, we did have a massive technical difficulty, but we're back. And we'll give you, of course, a whole hour-long show. Speaking of the show, tomorrow we are going to have Nina Turner, the incomparable Nina Turner, and Lauren Ashcraft on the show. So that, the interviews now are at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So they start half an hour before the main show. They are part of the main show. Ashcroft, I should say, is a really interesting challenger to a Democratic incumbent in New York. She's done a fundraiser called F the Police. So we'll talk to her and Nina Turner, the Queen, tomorrow, 5:30 p.m. And as you can see with our technical difficulties, we need help in keeping Young Turks strong, healthy, and sustainable. So tyt.com/go. It's no joke. Thank you for all the folks that have helped. Let's take a look at the thermometer real quick. We're at 51,816. Can I see 52 or maybe 53 so we can buy a new laptop for our producer? Okay, so I need a new one too. Anyway, seriously, guys, I don't know. We miraculously keep this show on air. Thank you to everyone who helped, and we appreciate anyone who does in the future. All right, Anna, let's do the news.
All right. Donald Trump shared an unsubstantiated conspiracy theory on social media to basically justify elder abuse at the hands of Buffalo, New York police officers. Now, this has to do with a story that we've been following since last week. 75-year-old Martin Gugino was viciously shoved to the ground by cops in Buffalo, New York. And after he was seen on the ground bleeding from his ear, they refused to help him in any way. Now, this has obviously drawn a lot of negative attention to the Buffalo Police Department, and Trump has shared a ridiculous conspiracy theory to try to smear and trash the victim in this story. So let me read you what the tweet is. And again, this is unsubstantiated, and I'll show you where he got this conspiracy theory from in just a minute. But he writes on Twitter, Buffalo protester shoved by police could be an Antifa provocateur. 75-year-old Martin Gugino was pushed away after appearing to scan police communications in order to black out the equipment. OANN, a crazy unhinged right-wing organization, that was my add-on to that, I watched. He fell harder than was pushed, was aiming scanner, could be a setup? So where did he get this from, Cenk? Well, none other than OANN, which shared this conspiracy theory, provided absolutely no evidence, absolutely no sources, and was narrated by someone who works for a Russian propaganda organization known as Sputnik. And he also sounds like a literal bot. So here's a segment or a portion from that segment.
Police videos appear to show Gugino using a police tracker on his phone, trying to scan police communications during the protest. The tactic known as skimming is an old trick used by Antifa to locate police officers and plan violent activities bypassing the police response. In addition, the 75-year-old, who's been referred to as an agitator, was supposedly using the technology to black out police communications. That, however, didn't quite work, and many Buffalo police officers support their embattled colleagues.
This country is a complete and utter nightmare, and it's because we have a literal troll who's hiding out in a bunker right now. Like, he's in a fortress that he's constructed around the White House because he's so afraid of the protesters, and he's just sitting there in his bunker tweeting out the types of things that you would expect a troll to tweet out, and not having to face any of the consequences because he's not going out in the public, he's not leading, he's not showing any level of competence whatsoever, which is honestly an understatement at this point. And he's just pathetic. Like, what's even more pathetic, Cenk, is, yes, the president's doing this, okay? But there's a portion of the country that totally buys into this. 75-year-old elderly man pushed to the ground, seen bleeding from his ear as he's laying there, and somehow he's the bad guy, according to Trump, and around 30% of this country. Okay.
Anna, but you seem to be leaving out the fact that he fell harder than he was pushed. I mean, look, the insanity of this tweet knows no bounds. And to the point where even his allies are running for the hills. This is just, even for them, this is beyond the bounds of not just reason, but now insanity. I mean, it's a whole different
Barely,
level.
though.
People are talking about
Barely.
Yeah. I mean, but like, it's mainly his critics that are Republicans that are saying he has a diseased mind, which I've been saying for a long time. In fact, I'll give you a tweet in a second from a guy I can't stand. But who looks at that and sees a 75-year-old in a pool of blood, which even that crazy right-wing network showed, and thinks fell harder than he was pushed. This is part of his conspiracy to bang his head against the concrete so hard that he would bleed from the ear and be hospitalized now nearly a week later, still in the hospital. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was his own conspiracy, that he would somehow trick the cops into smashing his head in until he almost died. So now
let's do an experiment. Let's do an experiment. Let's get those 2 cops who have been charged with second-degree assault to use the same level of force against Donald Trump. Let's do it. Let's do an experiment. Be a leader, Trump. Be a leader. You're so brave. Coward, complete and utter coward. Like a little boy, little 14-year-old child, or like behind his little fortress, like pooping in his pants because he's so scared, right? And at the same time, just putting out nonsense provocations, unsubstantiated allegations and conspiracies about people who've been victimized by police brutality. He's an agent of chaos, and he should be institutionalized. I'm not even, at first I was like, no, we're not mental health professionals. Like, how much more can we take? How much more evidence do we need that this is a kind of person who needs to be institutionalized? He is a danger to society. He needs to be locked away in a mental health facility, and he should be receiving treatment. He's insane.
Well, look, I'd like to take credit for saying that from day one, and I got a lot of blowback for many years. I go, Cenk, you can't talk about his mental state like that. You're not a clinical therapist. I mean, everybody.
Don't care anymore.
Yeah,
don't care.
And honestly, it wasn't even Republicans as much as it was Democrats. But now here I'll get to the guy who apparently I agree with him, but only on this. Anyway, Dan Pfeiffer from the Obama administration, who's a classic establishment Democrat, who, all those guys in the beginning poo-pooed how crazy Donald Trump was. Now he says Trump's latest tweet is a reminder that he is not a political genius, marketing savant, or master media manipulator. He's a deeply stupid narcissist that stumbled backwards into the presidency despite getting millions of fewer votes. I mean, everybody who watches the Young Turks knows I said that from day one. Deeply stupid, no strategy. It has taken 3.5 years for people to go, oh my God, he might not have any strategy at all. Of course! I've been telling you that for so long. Deeply stupid, completely narcissistic. Okay, so now, but let's talk about this, the political ramifications of this. Cheerleading a 75-year-old getting his head bashed in, bleeding from the ear, and having the cops step over him and not attend to him, that's not going to help you with the senior citizen vote. And that is used to be your bastion, what carried the election for you in 2016. He won the above 65 vote by 13 points in 2016. Wow, 13 points, even though he would cut Social Security and Medicare in a heartbeat. He'd destroy them in a heartbeat. But he won anyway because people don't know. All they hear is TV and they watch The Apprentice. Look, there's some wonderful folks in that community, including Martin Gugino, that we absolutely love and adore. But unfortunately, the majority only watch TV, from which they get absolutely no real information. So anyway, now, already before the Gugino incident, he's 15 points underwater with above 65-year-old voters. That's a 28-point swing. When your biggest voting base in terms of age demographics is concerned has had a 28-point swing, and then you cheerlead an assault on a 75-year-old, you are a political idiot. So it is incredibly damaging. Now, to your point, Anna, about how we're being, I think you said being controlled at some point or whatever. That guy, the Russian bot that we heard, Yeah, he worked at Sputnik. If you're one of those folks on the left who are still like, oh, no, don't criticize anything Russian. Don't criticize anything Russian. I could have been a totally normal person who worked at Sputnik. Yeah, all right. Last month, that same reporter reported that coronavirus was a cover by George Soros, Bill Gates, Dr. Fauci, the Clintons, and China for population control. So, no. The Russian government is clearly putting operatives into right-wing media, and whether that's what's affecting Trump right, Trump independently also is getting those same messages. It doesn't matter because the final result is a Russian operative or Russian reporter now blames their two main enemies, America and China, for starting coronavirus along with Soros and Clinton. And it goes all the way up to the president. The president broadcasts it, and 30% of the country believes it. And, that's what you said, Anna. He's an agent of chaos. Mm-hmm. Putting aside the movie illusions, yes! And what did Russia want? They wanted chaos in the country. Mission totally accomplished. You really have to give Putin credit. It was masterful. And now, I mean, for all those years I was growing up, the right wing said that the left wing would get controlled by Russia. And now, like the dolts that they are, so easily controlled by the Russian government. Okay.
No, it's incredible, though. It really is a sight to see. It's a sight to see that there is a significant chunk of this country that is now advocating for elder abuse. Like, just clearly 100% making excuses for what we saw last week, which was one of the most disgusting displays of police brutality I've seen, mostly because we're talking about someone who's 75 years old. Like, I can't get over the fact that it's elder abuse. It's elder abuse, right? Like every other story we've covered, there have been people who have tried to find something, right? Something that the victim did that was a provocation, something that the victim allegedly did wrong, which of course I never bought into any of that. But in this case, how are you going to argue that a 75-year-old was a threat to the freaking stormtroopers that we saw in that video? There were dozens of them against a 75-year-old man. It's just pathetic. And as he lay there bleeding from his ear, none of them wanted to help except for one individual, one cop, and he was discouraged from doing so. And so look, Trump is easy to manipulate because everyone knows what Trump wants to hear. All you have to do is say things that you know Trump wants to hear that would minimize or at least discredit the legitimacy of these protests that are happening right now. And of course he's going to run with it. Of course he's going to tweet about it. This is what he does. He's done it from day one. And for all the Republicans who are getting credit right now for speaking out against what Trump had to say on Twitter about Martin Gugino, you know, I'm only going to give credit to one person, and it's Mitt Romney, because Mitt Romney had the strongest statement. Here's what he had to say. I'm going to skip ahead to his comment. I saw that tweet. It was a shocking thing to say, and I won't dignify it with any further comment. That was, in my opinion, the strongest comment. Lisa Murkowski, who keeps getting credit for like her mild criticisms of Donald Trump, also commented, Senator Lisa Murkowski, after reading a printed out version of Trump's tweet given to her by political congressional reporter Burgess Everett, reportedly gasped and said, "Oh, my Lord, again? Why would you fan the flames? That's all I'm going to say." Wow, Murkowski, brave, super, super brave. Like, why are you surprised? This is what Donald Trump does. This is who Donald Trump is. This is who Donald Trump is. And part of the reason why he was able to get as far as he has is because he's had nothing but bootlickers like you surrounding him because you're so afraid of being politically incorrect and offending Donald Trump's base. Because our democracy doesn't matter, our constitutional rights don't matter, doing the right thing by your own constituents doesn't even matter. The only thing that matters to these Republican lawmakers is their own asses, their own political careers, and that's it. None of these people have ever been so-called constitutionalists. None of them have ever cared about our freedoms. None of them have ever cared about the troops or the safety and well-being of American citizens. And I think that the Trump presidency has made that abundantly clear. We have nothing more than a bunch of cowards in Congress right now who have done nothing more than embolden this child who continues to fan the flames of division in this country.
Yeah. So last two things here. First of all, look, the number one thing that was said about Trump for 3.5 years that drove me crazy is, oh, he's doing that tweet or he's saying that outrageous, horrible, horrific thing as a distraction from the other horrific thing he said. No, there's never any strategy. He's not a distraction. He's just an idiot. So we reported on day one, The Intercept and the Young Turks did, about the groups that Martin Gugino is actually part of. It is not Antifa. He's part of Push Buffalo, which focuses on affordable housing. He's also part of the Western New York Peace Center. Oh my God, a 75-year-old who wants peace. Outrageous.
Bad boy.
And he's part of the Catholic worker movement. And he's also part of Plowshares, which we told you about before. They are anti-nuclear activists who are driven by their Catholic faith. So a guy who is deeply religious, as opposed to a guy who holds the Bible upside down after he tear gassed pastors off of that same church's porch. So, gee, I wonder who's belongs to the right organizations and who doesn't. But I hope every senior citizen in the country sees Donald Trump, sees that video, and then sees Donald Trump defending it, because he might lose every state in the country if they see that.
When we come back from the break, we'll give you some unbelievable statements from a man named Earl Gray, believe it or not. He's a lawyer representing one of these Minneapolis cops, and he is a complete and utter disaster. We'll give you that and more when we come back.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk and Anna with you guys. Let me read your comments as usual from the member section, tyt.com/join to become a member. Anahita 13 writes in, donation made while waiting. Well, we appreciate it. A couple of you guys wrote in about that. And obviously we need it. tyt.com/go and keep us strong and sustainable here. Oh, we have a new thermometer. Can I see that real quick? 52,790. You guys are wonderful. If we can get to 53 or 54, that would be great. As you can tell, it's needed. All right. So Stefania says that is the creepiest AI voice I've ever heard. Russian accent, no less. Porkchop Express says, how many businesses does someone have to bankrupt before you realize they have no strategy at all? Agreed. And Anna's Margarita Salt and Midwest Misfit say that they're giving on YouTube Super Chat to help as well. Midwest Misfit says, donation from to my future spot as a virtual correspondent for TYT. Keep up the great work you all do. You all doing great. Thank you so much. And finally, our sponsors help too, and they're progressive. There's not a lot of them, but we pick carefully, and an aspiration keeps your money completely away from fossil fuels, and they give you good return, and they plant 10 trees when you sign up an account, and when you keep using the account, they plant more trees. Aspiration.com/TYT. Let's try to keep this planet intact. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right. Earl Gray, a lawyer representing one of the Minneapolis police officers who has been charged in the murder of George Floyd. And in this case, it was aiding and abetting what happened to George Floyd, aiding and abetting second-degree murder, argues that, maybe what happened wasn't really as bad as it's being described. Maybe it's not as bad as you saw in that video. And he explains why in this next video. Take a look.
If all of these people say, why didn't my client intercede? Well, if the public is there and they're so in an uproar about this, they didn't intercede either. And my client's down where he can't really see.
Hold on, Counselor, hold on.
Yes,
Two things. One, you're laying on a man's legs. You've got a fine view of what's going on with that man. The other officer is literally a foot in front of you on his neck. Two, I understand that he has a senior officer telling him what to do, but there's also a duty to intervene. And if you think an officer is doing something that's dangerous to a civilian, you have a duty to intervene. And he did not intervene. And the idea that the civilians should have rushed in to a policing situation in the inner city of Minneapolis against 4 police officers that have weapons and are kneeling on the neck of a man, don't you think that's asking a little much of civilians and a little too little of your client?
I mean, it's incredible because, Cenk, like we've seen in other cases what happens to innocent people, bystanders who find the brutality, the excessive force to be unconscionable. They want to get involved. They want to do something about it to stop it. And they're met with brute force. Like what kind of weird argument is this to expect civilians to get involved to stop the brutality as it's happening? How about finding like at least somewhat of a decent defense for your client? If this is the defense that he's coming up with, Thomas Lane, who's the cop he's representing, is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, the argument appears to be weak tea, if you will. Okay, on to the important stuff. Thomas Lane actually does have a decent argument to make, and Earl Grey did make it later. But God, that was a terrible argument to start with. You gotta do some practice internally before you go on TV. Great follow-up question by Chris Cuomo, is about as good as I've seen on cable news. So the good case to make for Thomas Lane, it'll be interesting to see how it goes in the courts, is he apparently did ask Chauvin if we should roll him over on his side 2 different times, and Chauvin refused. And Chauvin is his commanding officer. So it's not a good enough excuse. You have a duty to intervene. He should have just taken things into his own hands before the guy died. Having said that, he was 4 days on the force, apparently, at least on the streets. He was getting trained by Chauvin. God help him. God help George Floyd for having dealt with all of these cops. And Lane was apparently the only police officer that got in the ambulance and tried to help with CPR. So, I would stick with that. That's by far your best chance at getting him off or getting a reduced sentence. But saying that the citizens should have intervened is absolutely insane. If they had, they probably would have been shot and killed. And every right-winger in the country would have defended it, saying, oh, how can you tackle the police? And remember, at that point, maybe they might have saved George Floyd's life if they tackled the cops. If they got to the cops to tackle them, which also wouldn't have happened because there was a cop standing guard who would have tased them, beat them up, killed them, etc. But if they had somehow gotten to Chauvin and somehow saved George Floyd's life, it probably would have been at the expense of their own. And at that point, we wouldn't have known that George Floyd was going to die. And every single, not just right-winger, honestly, almost everyone in the media would have said, oh, my God, they tackled cops. They had it coming. How could they possibly assault poor police officers like this? Oh, my God, the cops have such a dangerous job. Of course, they had to murder those people who came in to tackle them. That's what would have happened. Everybody knows it.
I also think that what the lawyers said there demonstrates the kind of disconnect that we've seen over and over again when it comes to like people's experiences with the cops, right? Because this lawyer has probably never had to worry about, calling the cops because he needs help, and then that whole situation turning out to, turn out unfortunate for him, like where the cops end up turning on him. Like there was this crazy video last week featuring a store owner.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, "You must unlearn what you have learned." And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFDR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
In Van Nuys, California. This was during the protest. There was some looting going on. And so the store owner was trying to flag down the cops to get some help. The store owner is a Black woman, okay? Again, this is in Van Nuys, California. And finally, the cops show up to help. And guess what they did? They immediately put her in handcuffs. So that's an experience that I'm sure good old Earl Grey over there has never experienced, is never concerned about. And that's why we've had a disconnect when it comes to the perspective or perception of policing in America. I think that there have been two different worlds. And I don't think that lawyer has any idea what it would be like if the 17-year-old girl filming the video of George Floyd getting murdered actually physically got involved to intervene and stop it from happening. Real quick, I also want to just give you some details about Thomas Lane and you know what his history is, because when I read about him, I mean, it just brings up a whole different issue with the hiring in some of these police departments. So Lane was only a week into his full-time career when the department, or in the department, when his training officer was filmed on Floyd's neck for nearly 9 minutes as he begged for help. Also, state court records show that from 2001 to 2018, he also racked up more than a dozen criminal charges and traffic citations. I don't care about those traffic citations at all, obviously. But they do show that he was convicted of 7 total charges. In October of 2001, when Lane was 18, he was charged with 2 counts of obstructing legal process, damaging property, unlawful assembly, and disorderly conduct. He was convicted of 1 count of obstructing legal process and 1 charge of damaging property. No, like I'm bringing this up because he was hired to be a cop. So I know that if you're looking to be a firefighter in Los Angeles, the background check that they do is so excruciatingly extensive. And if you have 1 small negative mark on your record, you have no chance of getting hired. How does a cop who's been convicted of something, criminal charges, get hired to work in the Minneapolis Police Department? That is part of the problem.
Yeah. Look,
this should be a job that's difficult to get. You should be, screened. You should have to have a psychological test to make sure you have a sound mind for this type of job. You're an armed officer, right? That should be a heavy, not a burden, but like a very serious job that should be, I don't know, just screened a little more heavily.
No, but look, I believe in redemption, and I don't know all of Thomas Lane's story. I do know the end of the story, which is disastrous and why he's arrested and should have been arrested. But they might have looked at that criminal record as the feature and not the bug. Oh, this guy's willing to damage things. Make a good cop. So anyway, but I just want to double down real quick on what you said earlier, because it's such a good point, Anna. For a lot of white folks in this country, especially wealthy white folks, they've had nothing but incredibly pleasant interactions with the police. And in fact, they can boss the police around and often do. And so that's why I think that they're confounded. Some of them in a positive way, like, whoa, they see the George Floyd thing and they're like, that's impossible. How could that be? Wow, what a bad cop, because every cop they've dealt with has kissed their ass, right? And so, and others, just the bad guys, don't believe it. They're like, no, cops treat me with kids' gloves. So I assume they do it for African Americans too, and African Americans are just crybabies. No, you idiot. They treat you differently because you're powerful and wealthy. And that's the giant disconnect in this country.
Well, let's move on to someone else who seems to be disconnected from reality, and that's the head of New York's police union. So Mike O'Mara, who's the head of New York's Police Benevolent Association, that's the union representing the police departments, raged about how cops have been mistreated in the press. Yeah. These videos are incredible to watch because remember, This is the head of the police union that represents cops in the state of New York. Take a look.
But I read in the papers all week, we all read in the papers, that in the black community, mothers are worried about their children getting home from school without being killed by a cop. What world are we living in? That doesn't happen. It does not happen. I am not Derek Chauvin. They are not him. He killed someone. We didn't. We are restrained. And you know what? I'm saying this to all the cops here. Because you know what? Everybody's trying to shame us. The legislators, the press, everybody's trying to shame us into being embarrassed about our profession. Well, you know what? This isn't stained by someone in Minneapolis. It's still got a shine on it. And so do theirs. So do theirs. Stop treating us like animals and thugs and start treating us with some respect.
Man, that is rich. That is rich. We have one more clip, which we'll get to in just a second. But Cenk, I mean, we're still reporting on what happened to Martin Gugino, a 75-year-old man who was shoved to the ground by two Buffalo, New York cops who are now facing second-degree assault charges. At the same time, all the dozens of other cops surrounding them didn't want to help Gugino, didn't even attempt to help Gugino. Only one of them tried, and he was discouraged from all the rest from doing so. I mean, New York is where police tried to run over protesters. New York is where Eric Garner was choked to death. I mean, how many more examples do you need? I love how he's trying to pretend as though, like, no, you don't get it. The cops in New York were golden. I mean, yeah, that stop and frisk situation, that was kind of bad. You know, that like systemic racial profiling we engaged in, that was kind of bad. But you know, let's not mention that right now. It's Minneapolis. Minneapolis, disgusting. Us, we still got to shine on it. No, you don't. You don't.
Now, Anna, what I was going to start with is Eric Garner. I mean, he said, we don't do that. No, you literally did that. New York City, forget Buffalo, New York City, these same exact cops. George Floyd got choked and he died. One of his last words was, "I can't breathe." Eric Garner got choked by NYPD, died. One of his last words was, "I can't breathe." It is nearly identical what you did. And the nerve of this guy to come up. And then he says, "Oh, we deserve respect." No, you go around killing people to try to get respect. That's, oh, hey, what did you say? Because what's the biggest crime in America? Disrespecting a police officer. They will crack your skull, they'll do a false arrest, and sometimes even kill you if you disrespect a police officer. And then he comes out and says, don't treat us like animals and thugs. You idiot. The whole point of the protest is that you treat people like animals and thugs and show them no respect whatsoever. We're supposed to cry for you. You got a gun that the government gave you. You have a badge that gives you enormous power, and you have immunity on top. And now you're crying that you don't have enough respect. And did you notice almost every person behind him, almost all the cops behind him were white? I say almost because I'm not 100% sure of all their ethnicities, but look at the video. There are no black cops there to be found. So why does that matter? Because probably they asked all the cops to show solidarity, especially because it's the union boss. And none of the black cops showed up because they probably don't agree. They probably know, very likely, that their community is picked on by the NYPD, and that's why they didn't show up there. And to all my leftist friends, I thought all unions were great. What happened?
Okay, so there's one more clip that I want to go to, featuring this, honestly, this ridiculous rant. So let's take a look at that. And then I want to show you. You can watch actual video of brutality that's taken place not a year ago, not 2 years ago, that's taken place over the last week in New York. All right, one more clip from O'Mara.
We've been left out of the conversation. We've been vilified. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Trying to make us embarrassed of our profession. 375 million interactions. Overwhelmingly positive. Nobody talks about all the police officers that were killed in the last week in the United States of America, and there were a number of them. We don't condone Minneapolis. We roundly reject what he did as disgusting. It's disgusting. It's not what we do. It's not what police officers do. Our legislators abandoned us. The press is vilifying us. Well, you know what, guys? I'm proud to be a cop. And I'm going to continue to be proud to be a cop until the day I retire.
So, like, Cenk, is the press vilifying the cops? Because I hear this accusation all the time. I hear it all the time, right? We're the bad guys because we're drawing attention to brutality. But here's the thing. Like, I'm not going to go streaking during an NFL game and then get upset when people put me in handcuffs because I went streaking during an NFL game. I went streaking during the game, right? That's a ridiculous example, but I took the action that got me arrested. In the case of the New York cops, they keep taking actions that lead to criticism, like what you're about to see in this short video compilation of police brutality just from the last week.
You're not doing anything, you f***ing bitch! What the f***?
No, I mean, it's just the Minneapolis cops. The New York cops are great. I mean, they just like to run people over as they're protesting.
Yeah, I'm beginning to agree more with the phrasing of defund the police. So
yeah, you should.
So I did notice one black cop in the second clip, by the way, just to be fair. But overall, this guy saying that they're vilified by the press is insanity. Yes, we have been at the Young Turks have been tough on police because we show you all their abuses. And why? Because we hate cops by nature? Of course not. We just want to correct it because African Americans and poor people in this country have been battered by police for decades and centuries. So our job is to cover the reality, and that's what we do. If he doesn't like that, that's a sad day for him. But for 9 out of 10 of those years, or actually we've been on the air 18 years, so it's for 17 out of 18 of those years, nobody joined us. What are you talking about, man? You turn on local news and cable news, but most especially local news anywhere in the country, and it was nonstop ass-kissing of cops. The cops are the best. The cops are heroes. The cops have dangerous jobs. The people who they beat up had it coming. They have a criminal record. They once smoked marijuana. And look at how dangerous they are. Look at a picture of a black guy breaking into your house in your neighborhood. Oh, it's so scary. Thank God the cops are here. And they'd have cops on the air all the time. Every expert they had on law enforcement was a cop or a former cop. Every local news anchor is buddies with cops, and they're the ones that are protected by the cops. So he thinks they were vilified by the press. They were lionized by the press. The press did overwhelming propaganda on their behalf for as long as we've been alive. So finally, when they go, hey, maybe you shouldn't take 9 minutes to murder a guy in front of our eyes, this guy's outraged. How dare you criticize us? But that's their sense of entitlement. And like the guys in Buffalo who quote unquote resign and won't do their jobs, but now say they want to get paid. In New York, conservative outlets are reporting that hundreds of officers want to resign because, in my opinion, because they don't get to brutalize black people anymore. Okay, great, resign. And yep. I don't want to hear any crap from any, whatever you want to call it, union, whatever, bureaucracy, government. I don't care, okay? If you say you're resigning, you stop getting paid that minute. You're free to go, hand in your gun and your badge, stop yapping, and if you want to resign, and clean up, go home, and get the hell out of here. And by the way, at that point, you'll be poor and probably beat up by your fellow cops.
Yeah, it's incredible because they don't see themselves as our public servants. They see us as their public servants. They see the press as their own little personal PR arm. And that's not what journalism is supposed to be. That's not what the media is supposed to do, even though for far too long, unfortunately, that is what we've seen in the media. So when he says that they haven't had a seat at the table, they haven't been heard, all we've been hearing from for years now, at least since I've been working at TYT covering these types of stories, has been their perspective and their defenses. And I think it's finally come to a point where people have had enough, and that's why you see them out on the streets. We got to take a quick break. When we come back, as the White House turns.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Some comments real quick. Member section Topcast says exactly, Cenk. It would have turned into a bloodbath if the citizens tried to intervene in Minneapolis with George Floyd. David Peter says, I live in Prague. It's a crossroads between Eastern and Western Europe. As such, I meet and know many Russian people. I fear that Americans will increasingly mistrust anyone with a Russian accent. And he goes on, David, you don't have to worry about that. We're progressives. Nobody... Like, you're mental if you discriminate against someone who's Russian because they're Russian. Of course not. Of course not.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
Right? At the same time, Vladimir Putin is not a little puppy dog who, oh my gosh, he would never interfere in any other country's actions. It's like, should you hate Turks? I hope not. But is Erdogan a good leader in Turkey? No. Those are 2 totally different things. So anyway, there's so many comments here. We gotta go. Thank you to everyone who contributed on YouTube Super Chat. We love you from the bottom of our heart, as well as everyone giving to tyt.com/go. So Anna, let's do the next story.
All right. Is Donald Trump turning on his own son-in-law, Jared Kushner, as the White House turns?
Made some very big mistakes. I asked for his resignation.
I'm disappointed in the Attorney General.
Over at Vanity Fair always has the juicy details about Donald Trump and how unbelievably insecure and thin-skinned he really is, even when it comes to his own family members. So Jared Kushner is one of his top advisors, and apparently Trump is beginning to turn on Kushner and his campaign manager, Brad Parscale, because turns out he's not doing well in polling, and he's blaming it on everyone surrounding him as opposed to blaming it on himself and his lack of competence, lack of leadership when it comes to, let's say, dealing with the pandemic, dealing with the division in this country, the protests over police brutality. He has just screwed everything up, but he wants to blame it on everyone else. And so, according to a former West Wing official who's aware of conversations that are happening within the Trump administration, Trump is malignantly crazy about the bad poll numbers. And one of the recent polls done by CNN indicates that Biden is leading by 14 points. And poll after poll just keeps indicating that that gap is widening. And so Trump is panicking. He's in complete panic mode. One Republican close to the campaign told Vanity Fair he's going to broom Kushner and Brad Parscale. The numbers are not getting better. Also over the weekend, I love this so much. Over the weekend, Trump called around to New York friends and outside advisors in hopes they would validate Trump's belief that the polls are wrong. He's asking people to agree with him that the polls are biased, but no one's telling him what he wants to hear, said a Republican briefed on the calls. And also there's this gross and awkward rivalry happening between Donald Trump and Jared Kushner. For instance, former West Wing officials recall how Trump hated when Kushner received too much positive press in January. Trump was rankled when Kushner's portrait graced the cover of Time. Also, one other source said, anytime Jared is in the papers, Trump complains, we have to get Jared back to New York, said a Republican who heard Trump make the comment. In the end, the source cautioned that Trump won't push Kushner out. This is typical with him and Jared, the source said. No, this is amazing. He's currently in a self-made fortress surrounding the White House because he's afraid of the protesters. He's doing nothing other than sending his, press secretary out to try to clean up his messes for him. And he's sending out ridiculous tweets with unsubstantiated conspiracy theories and claims about people who have been victimized by police brutality, like a 75-year-old man, Martin Gugino. That's who Donald Trump is. He's just so pathetic. And I love every moment of these stories because it just reveals how weak he really is.
So it also gives you insight into why he's such a horrific manager and why he's gone bankrupt 6 times. So if you have a boss who is not open to new ideas, to critique, to changing, to adapting, that's already a disaster. If he's just looking for yes men, well, then you'll never learn and you'll never adapt. And if you don't learn and adapt in business, yeah, you're going to go bankrupt. And if you're running a country, yeah, over 100,000 people will die from coronavirus because you reacted poorly to the disease. You'll have civil unrest. You'll have over 20 million people unemployed, and the list goes on and on. And that's. But the second part of how bad a manager he is actually more devastating. He not only is not looking for competence. We've talked a lot about this before. He's looking for loyalty because, like mob bosses, loyalty matters more to him as a lifelong criminal than competence. But he actively pushes out competence because if anyone is competent and gets positive press, he goes, well, no, I don't want him then because he's outshining me. But wait a minute, your IQ is below 70. You barely have 2 brain cells to rub together. Everyone will outshine you if they're even barely competent. So, and that'll bother you. So you'll push out anyone who's remotely intelligent. That's why he's in a lifeboat with a bunch of dummies who are like, I don't know what right or left is, like Jared Kushner and Stephen Miller and these parade of idiots. And last thing about that, why is Jared Kushner running everything? I know he's family, so he thinks he can trust them, etc. And then he gets mad. I don't want my son-in-law to be better than me. What a pathetic, sad little man. But I bring that up because I thought Ivanka was a smart one in the family. And I thought she was a proud woman and standing up for women's rights. And why is she letting her husband run everything? Why is Ivanka not involved in any policy conversations, but it's her dolt of a husband who goes in and does all that stuff? And they don't believe in women's rights. They don't believe in anything.
Of course not.
Can I one more thing about the polling? His favorite pollster is Rasmussen because they consistently get it wrong. They always favor Republicans, and then the elections show that they were off. They're one of the worst polling organizations, and the errors do not go in both directions. They always favor Republicans, right? It's just to make Republicans feel better before they lose. Even in the Rasmussen poll, Trump is now down by 11.
It's delicious. It really is. And so to make him feel better about himself, the Trump campaign has decided to invest in some ads that play during cable news shows that Trump typically watches, right? So the Daily Beast reported on this, and they said over the past month, the Trump campaign has spent roughly more than $400,000 on cable news ads in Washington, D.C., buying time largely on Fox News, but with some smaller buys on CNN and MSNBC as well. So I say this because the whole reason why they're using these ads on cable news is because they want Trump to feel good about himself. To knowledgeable sources, the Daily Beast writes, one, a Trump campaign advisor, the other individual close to the president, said the D.C. area ads had another purpose as well, to put the president himself at ease. And just get a load of how ridiculous this ad is.
In a China shop, changing Washington. It takes a Donald Trump to demand truth from China. Shut down foreign travel. Get ventilators and tests now. Raise unemployment benefits. Cash relief to families. Washington's come to that. President Trump's not always polite. Mr. Nice Guy won't cut it. He does it his way, not the Washington way. But Donald Trump gets it done.
That was incredible.
Yeah. No, this is wonderfully hilarious. So he has no chance of winning Maryland or Virginia. So this has no electoral strategy at all. They just flushed $400,000 down the toilet. If it's meant to reassure Republican senators, man, you're in so much trouble that you're worried about reassuring psychologically Republican senators who back you no matter what you do. You can shoot a guy on Fifth Avenue and they'll vote with you. But they're so jittery, you got to reassure them. It's certainly not to win over any Democrats in the area. No, the real reason is, as Anna pointed out, no, they want to make him feel better. He's down in the dumps, and he likes this. He likes these little commercials, and also, by the way, to not get fired.
Yeah.
So Brad Parscale might get fired, and he's got a Ferrari and a Range Rover and a couple of mansions to pay for. So he's thinking, well, if I get the commercials in front of the baby's face, maybe the baby will watch it and then, keep me on the job. So he just spent $400,000, which I love, of either rich Republican money or, sucker Republican voters that gave like $5 at a time that paid for that guy's Ferrari and for Trump to feel a little bit better running a completely useless commercial in D.C.
Yeah, and look, the mark of a true leader is someone who wants honest feedback. They want to do better. They want to be informed. They want to be effective. And these people surrounding Donald Trump, people who work on his campaign, understand that in order to keep their jobs, they literally have to lie to him and tell him what he wants to hear, because he doesn't want to hear the truth. He doesn't care about being an effective leader. All he cares about is delegitimizing any constructive criticism of the job he's doing while amplifying complete and utter nonsense about how he's the strongest and the toughest. He's been such a failure. The country is in the middle of sheer chaos. Everyone sees it. No one can deny it. And he's still looking for validation. And that blows my mind.
And the next one was going to say, you cannot put baby in a corner.
I wouldn't be surprised at this point, really.
All right, guys, we got a big post game for you guys, including dunking on Ben Shapiro. You'll love it. TYT.com/join for our members. So we appreciate it, and we'll see you there.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.